Okay, so I guess my last question is, why is there not a Christian why is there not a Christian movement to blow the Jews and the Muslims up and take the land back for Christians? Why does that not exist?
Because there's nothing for the Christian in he or herself. There's nothing attaching us to physical land.
Okay.
There's nothing attaching us to physical land. The
Christian Zion people don't believe that there's anything attaching us to the land?
Not Christians. They believe, a Christian Zionist believes that it's the Jews are coming back to that land. And there'll be a great number of Jews that will come to know the Lord after they've returned to that land.
Well, that hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't happened.
No.
And so, but also they've not returned to the fullness of their land either. And so if that's part of that plan.
They got to take back Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, going all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates. Yeah. So, I think Christians find themselves in these really different places. I think you got some Christians that don't care. Some Christians that are going, yeah, there's a plan for the Jews at the end times after the fullness of the Gentiles, which we read about in Romans 11 last week as well. There's a plan for the Jews, for them at the end of the fullness of Gentiles, and it involves the land, so the land is important. And then I think you've got probably the extreme side that's constantly equating the people of Israel with the governing state that's presently there in Israel.
Right.
And therefore, basically saying that you, as a Christian, have to approve of everything that the geopolitical state of Israel is doing.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Right. Okay, so I guess this is my last question.
Okay.
Why would God promise a thing
Uh-huh.
that is going to result in an eternity of people blowing each other up? Like he knew this was coming, right?
Sure.
So that doesn't seem right.
Okay.
For God to have done.
I gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, basically the fact that there would always be this contentiousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Over this thing that was promised.
I gotcha.
Why would he promise that if he knew that that was the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, to be honest with you.
Because that's part of what makes me think of replacement.
Uh-huh.
Which is, hey, Jews, you don't have to fight for this anymore. That's our promise now.
I gotcha.
So stop getting blown up and go live somewhere else.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, but of course,
and let these weirdos have the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but of course, like for Jews, obviously, right? They're not believing in a replacement theology of Christian Zionism or anything Christian, right? They're just like, that's our land, right? If all you have was the Old Testament scriptures to go by, that's their land.
Because I think it's weird as Christian Zionists to be like, no, stay there.
Yeah, I got you. Well, in other words, so why do Christian Zionists basically keep saying to Jews, yeah, keep putting yourselves in harm's way?
Right. That's what I don't get.
Okay.
And why would God want this?
Why would God want that to be the case?
Yes.
Man, I don't know. I think it's one of the great questions is, why has there always been this seemingly deep animosity toward Jews?
Right.
I mean, for 4,000 years, right? Like, what's the deal? And I understand, I'm not saying the Jews have done everything perfectly either, right? But they've been targeted when they've been a very weak group. And that goes all the way back to the Amalekites picking off women and children as they were coming out of Egypt. I mean,
and even before then, if you want to argue with someone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that the issue kind of, like why are the Jewish people kind of always being quote unquote picked on in some ways, but then also why are they seemingly it's not like they're always turning away or, like if you poke them a little bit, they're liable to poke you right back.
Right.
And so
even harder.
Yeah. And so I get that. So I'm not saying one's overly right or wrong, but I do think it's an interesting thought experiment of saying, well, why did God want this? Why would God why, because I could talk about like why God wanted them to be in the land originally, like why Canaan was important in the grand scheme of things leading up to Jesus' coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I could argue for that, but I see your point of like from that point on, Jesus has come. The temple was destroyed in Jerusalem in 70, AD. And so who cares?
Right.
Like, just let it be, go live in peace somewhere else. And I don't know if they'd live in peace anywhere, I guess is kind of what I'm getting to. Because it seems like they're always, like even when they didn't have a land.
Right. People still didn't like them.
People still didn't like them. They hated them.
But if they spread out a bit.
But they were spread out. I mean, a pretty good bit, you know. And then Holocaust happened. Right. And so, I think that probably lends a little credence to the fact that they are God's people, and the fact that they're still here, the fact that they're still even in Israel to talk about, as a people group. So I think as Christians, I think I understand the nuances, I guess, like of the realities of what this present day Israel has brought, right? Because it's caused displacement. It has caused oppression. Like, and it's caused constant or led to constant wars, battles, So like, I get that, or conflicts. I get that. And I think it's actually, we could do a whole nother episode on that, but I think it's a whole nother discussion point of like, what is God setting them up for? Right. And I don't know if I've got a great answer to that, other than, is God going to somehow be glorified of the fact of this little group in the middle of people that do not like them and do not care for them and want to have that land, still have the land and it's going to survive, and somehow that points to God's protection over them. I don't know.